Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk About Real Estate podcast, the podcast for real estate agents absolutely everywhere. I'm Lisa B, and during this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything real estate. What's working, what's not working, AI, automation, technology, EXP Realty, and absolutely everything to do with real estate. I'll have guest speakers as well, where we'll answer your questions from the Facebook group, Let's Talk About Real Estate. So if you haven't joined the Facebook group, make sure you do that now, and we'd be happy to help answering any question. And again, welcome to the show. All right, so this is Lisa B from Let's Talk About Real Estate podcast, and welcome everybody to our show today. Let's Talk About Real Estate podcast is featured on Spotify, Apple Music, Overcast, Stitcher, Libsyn, YouTube, and now we have a special announcement. We are now featuring on EXP's radio station and podcast, which I'm really excited about. So they're based in the US, and it's KGCI Real Estate on air. So it's podcast and radio station. So welcome to all the awesome American real estate agents over there listening, and welcome to all of the other real estate agents around the world as well. And we're super excited to have you join us. Our podcast has the potential to reach hundreds of thousands of real estate agents, as EXP alone is 89,000 agents in 24 countries. And so we're in great company. So now for our special guest today, beautiful Judymay Murphy is joining me today all the way from London. Judymay is an international speaker who has spoken on stages with the best of the best. She has been at the top of her game for 24 years and counting, more. She's a personal coach to many experts and well-known people in the business and the entertainment worlds. Welcome, Judymay, to the show.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me here. We've been trying to do this for quite some time, and finally our schedules allowed it.
Exactly. So yes, and that was a bit of a long introduction, but just wanted to say all that. I'm super excited about our potential reach of all the real estate agents that we can sort of give this information to. And I'm really excited about going through this topic with you too. So I'll just do a little pre-frame into what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about 4 types of people in any business situation. So you've created a system called the 8 Gs, and today we're going to be discussing the first 4 Gs. So 4 different types of money-making personalities in business. So here's a few scenarios for our listeners. So anyone out there, have you ever noticed somebody who might be a salesperson, maybe that's too pushy, too over the top and busy, too lazy, not interested, overly friendly, or fake? Have you ever wondered if you are overdoing some aspects of your personality as well? So Judymay is going to help us understand why people are the way they are, and perhaps more importantly, how to build ourselves into a more well-rounded professional salesperson and business person. So I've got a few questions for you, Judymay. So first of all, for those of our listeners who may think we're being a bit judgy, putting people into different categories, as some listeners might think, we should just leave people to be who they are and accept everybody for who they are, including ourselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, all for it. The challenge is, though, when we go to grow, we need to discern. We're not criticizing, we're not judging, we're not making it wrong. We're just noticing. We're saying, there's this aspect to me that isn't working for me. Or if you're in a relationship with someone, there's this aspect to what you're doing, not who you are. It's not about changing people, it's about changing behaviors, changing our own behaviors first before we even start to look at anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, we've all seen the pushy salespeople, and I remember one of my old clients said to me, I'm thinking about going with this salesperson because they're really pushy. And they say, I don't like them, but they're really pushy. And it's like, well, how are you going to feel if you're the buyer? If they're that pushy, are you going to like that as well? So, it's sort of looking, it's looking at yourself, but also at the competition with what they're doing. And then, like you said, sort of adjusting those bits and pieces of ourselves that's going to help us be more, more attracting or more magnetic, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you said something very interesting there where they said, I like them because they're pushy. Usually when we're attracted to someone, when we're trying to bring someone into our business, or we're trying to become friends with them or get into a love relationship with them, it's because they have this aspect that we feel that we're missing in ourselves. So for a great many years, I was really, really timid. And when I was really timid, I was super attracted to really tough people because they would forge ahead and I would sort of slip into the slipstream behind them and just be like, oh, we're doing all these cool things without having to grow myself. So I'd watch out for, are you trying to bring something into your business without having developed it in yourself first?
Yeah, definitely. Good point. Okay, so what are the first four parts of your system types, and how did you create them?
Okay, so it's created out of our ways that we develop of asserting ourselves or coping under stress. So we've all heard about fight, flight, and freeze. There's also a fourth one that humans do, which is fawning, which is kind of just, sucking up to people, being really friendly, saying, "Hey, you know what? If I'm nice to you, then you'll be right with me, and we can crack on," as you'd say in Australia. And the thing is, though, that we tend to overuse those as time goes by. Why is that? Because they've worked for our whole lives. So if someone is a fight type, then they tend to grow up to be a gladiator. They tend to grow up to be someone who that's what they lead with. And it's a good thing. They're able to forge away. They're able to say, hey, don't treat that person like that. They're able to say, look, this is what we're doing. Let's move it along. So it's a really, really great attribute. That's the fight type. Now, fighting doesn't mean confrontation. Some people say, I can't be a gladiator, I can't be a fight type because I don't like confrontation. It's not about confrontation, it's about leaning in heavily. So you might be leaning in with curiosity. You might be leaning in with solutions. You might be leaning in with humor, but you're very much leaning in, going first, forging away. And when you're that type, when you're a gladiator type, as many people are in real estate, when you're a gladiator type, you tend to feel quite alone a lot of the time. You're like, hey, you know what? If I don't do it, no, if I don't do this myself, no one else is going to. I'm always out here. Because you're leading, you can look around and there's no one immediately to your left or right, or no one ahead of you. And you can start telling yourself a story that this means that you're alone in this. And then gladiators can get quite angry. They can, start to feel like they are just like a one-person army. And that's when they stop hiring people in. That's when they stop collaborating with people because they're overusing that component, that huge part of who they are. So that's the gladiator type.
First one, yes.
And can you recognize yourself in that at all, Lisa?
Oh, just a touch. Just a touch.
Just a little, right?
And like being that personality type, it's sometimes, and it's interesting being in a room full of other people that are like that. And sometimes you sit back and you think, I think Tony Robbins used to say it, if there's a fire, the gladiator will end up putting it out. It's sort of like if nobody else is going to do it, it's like that's it. So it's sort of like you step into things, you sort of sometimes sit back and think, okay, if nobody else does it, then I'll do it. Or you take the lead, it's sort of the two different scenarios.
Yeah, and this is why I came up with these four different types, is because we're kind of left sitting there saying to ourselves, well, I'm the kind of person that does this. But when you can parse it out, when you can say, oh, I'm using this part of my personality, because most of us aren't just one thing. So perhaps you'll start to recognize yourself in one of the other three as well, because we tend to have one that's dominant and then one that we rely on when our dominant way of being isn't working for us.
Yeah.
So the one that equates to the fawn type, the friendly type, is what I call the guardian. And the guardian is all about, let me look after everybody. And once I've looked after everybody, then I'll be safe. Then my system will be safe. This gladiator type won't attack me, or I'll be able to just smooth things over. And it could be that you're using charm. It could be that you're using nurturing. It could be that you're using activities like cooking for people, or thinking about them and reminding them, oh, it's your mom's birthday next week. So all of these ways are kind of like taking guardianship of other people. And Whereas, like with all the types, that is fantastic in and of itself. But when it's overused, you'll tend to be looking after everybody except yourself. And again, like with the gladiator, a lot of people who are guardians feel quite alone. They feel a bit like, well, what about me? I'm doing all these amazing things for other people, often things they haven't asked for. And, why is it that no one's doing these things, doing things for me that I haven't asked for? So it's kind of like interesting that when a guardian type isn't good at communicating, isn't good at listening to what's actually being agreed by the tribe, that's when things can get messy because you're overdoing it and you just don't know, why is it that people aren't appreciating you? So again, like with the gladiator, the guardian type can feel really underappreciated.
Yeah. And also, yeah, feel used. If they're doing all
Feel
the
used
for other people,
completely,
as you
completely.
said, people
So
haven't asked for
let's
it.
suppose let's suppose you're selling a house to a couple, and one is a gladiator type and one is a guardian type. Well, to the gladiator, you're going to be saying very different things than what you're going to be saying to the guardian type. To the gladiator, you might be talking about, okay, let's move this forward. Next stages. You've got this. So things that are really speaking to that part of themselves, they'll recognize themselves in your enthusiasm. But to the guardian, if you say, right, let's move it forward, let's push it, they'll just see you as other to them. So the way that you get in rapport with a guardian type will be to say, just to notice something like, oh gosh, every time I come around here, you always have a lovely cup of tea for me. I'm not used to that. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And suddenly they're like, oh, I'm seen. I'm these tiny, tiny things,
Yeah.
but starting to treat people according to who they know themselves to be.
Awesome. Okay, good. Now the third one.
All right. I was pausing in case I was just going to be delivering you this big lecture with points. So the next type then is based on that they're based on trauma responses. So this isn't new. This is things that we have known for over 100 years, and so many different psychologists have and coaches have developed systems that are akin to this. But the reason that I love 8G is because, first of all, it doesn't just stop at the 4, it goes into a deeper level, which is the other 4, which we're not going to cover today. But also because it personalizes it. It's like, oh, we are these archetypes, because normally trauma responses, fight, fright, flight, freeze, and fawn, and archetypes are treated completely differently as two separate models. So I've kind of like just merged the two together. So the next type that we're looking at, the type that goes into flight, and that doesn't mean running away, it means crazy activity, right? So just if I keep moving, I can't be hurt. And these people end up being very, very productive. And so in the 8G system, the flight type then is called the go-getter. So they're just going to go get it. They're just like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. Like just tons and tons of tasks, activities, ticking it off the list. And people who are go-getters, they're exhausted, as you can imagine. And as soon as they relax, when you see a go-getter, you're like, why don't they just chill? And the reason is because as soon as that happens, they feel unsafe. As soon as we step out into another type, so as soon as if you're a go-getter, and then you become more like the genie that we'll talk about in a minute, where the genie is just kind of like sitting there and contemplating and imagining. And they're just like, there's no activity to bolster it, no activity to make the go-getter feel safe. They will find something. So as soon as a go-getter sits down, after a really busy business day, they will rather than resting, so they're fresh for the next day, they'll get up and they'll fold towels. They will find something, because we will always find a way to get back to our point of safety as animals. All scared animals run for home is a phrase that I love. And that's what we are. At any moment, we're scared animals when we're not feeling completely safe, when we're not feeling like our sales are where they need to be, when we're not feeling that sale of that house is going to go through, when we're not finding the properties that we want in any particular neighborhood. We feel like I'm not safe here. And so depending on what type you are, you're going to go toward a particular activity that maybe isn't needed. For a lot of go-getters, they don't need to do more. They might need to sit and listen to a client. They might need to be more gladiator, move it forward. We usually need something else, but unless we can consciously define what that is, unless we can say to ourselves, well, I'm pure guardian. I need to be much more gladiator today. Or I haven't been working through my to-do list. I've kind of been just sitting there imagining what it'll be like to own that car, once I'm with EXP. And so the thing is that they are, thinking in those terms rather than how can I be more of particularly the one that is completely missing. We all tend to have one that we just don't go to. And for a lot of people in real estate, the one that they don't go to is called Genie, and that's a freeze mode. And a lot of people see freeze mode as just what it looks like on the outside. It looks very, very still. And Lisa, we've known each other for quite some time, and you know that is my dominant mode. And so it would look like I'm just sitting there doing nothing. Whereas inside, I've got this like whole world going on. And I'm looking at scenarios and I'm putting together things, I'm creating, I'm remembering, I'm feeling, so I feel like there's so much going on. And why does no one get that? Why does no one know how amazing my world is? Well, because it's all inside and it needs to come outside. And it needs to come outside with activities. So when you are a Genie type, you need to become more go-getter, just as when you are a gladiator, you need to become more guardian.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the big conflicts in those four personality types, isn't there? Like if you're not sort of you're the Genie, but you're not being forceful with what you need to do, or you're not ticking things off your to-do list. There's just so many variations of.
And it's really interesting that you went to that example, because you can see that very clearly, because the second one that you tend to go to is go-getter. Okay, right, let's do this. Your activity. Whereas from a Genie position, we can see that the go-getters need to imagine more. If they just took some time to say, hey, you know what? Let's imagine that you are selling a property for someone, and when you sit and contemplate, you realize, oh, they've got a fishing boat hitched up to a trailer. My brother does that. Let me talk to my brother about it. So the next time that you go and talk to them, you can be like, oh yeah, my brother fishes on this lake. Or it could be something like, well, you know what? I've been operating at this level for a long time. It's time for me to be part of a community that really elevates me. But without that kind of thoughtfulness, without that imagining, what would it be like if I was surrounded by people who were really expert, who were able to mentor me, peers who were really rooting for me? What would that feel like? And then rather than just doing what you always do in a rote fashion, as many go-getters do, you're able to elevate. So what the Genie position does is it kind of elevates you to the next level of your dream. We're dreamers, us as Genies, we're dreamers, and it has its function. But as you say, if you are a dreamer type, if you are a Genie, you gotta, like a go-getter, you gotta take that action. Like the gladiator, you gotta stand firm. And also as a guardian, you gotta look after yourself and others.
Absolutely. You've got to get that well-rounded personality, don't we? All right.
That's it.
So do you tend to get more of a certain type of person in a particular profession? Like, is it more, as you said, gladiators that are drawn to real estate? And why would they be drawn to real estate, do you think?
Brilliant question. So yes, absolutely. So why do so many poets not become real estate agents, right? The reason is because poets are by nature the type that's like Genie, and then usually guardian is their second type. So it doesn't have that forcefulness. Sales is what does gladiators do really, really well with sales, because it's about moving it forward. Hey, it's kind of like hunting, right? You say you find your person, you go and you hunt them down, and you get it, and you make the deal, and I mean, it's not there, the metaphor ends, you're not dragging carcasses back to your office, but the thing is that it has that really, really big, I'm going to go get mine sort
Yeah.
of energy.
Yes.
And then if you're just all about that, people are going to feel used. And that's why it's really important for people in sales to make sure that they round that out, particularly with being more guardian. And how are you feeling about this deal how are you feeling now that we've done the deal? Not just, running away and going and getting the next thing, but checking in with people. How's your home working for you now? It's been a year since we did the sale. I was just celebrating. It just came up on my guardian kind of energy, right? But also the interesting thing about real estate agents in particular is you're not just sitting there doing that from home. Why is that? Because you've got go-getter energy as well. It's a mixture of go-getter and gladiator, because go-getters are about like physically moving, physically going out there. So, if I had to go out in the world and physically do things other than sit in 5-star hotels drinking tea and talking to clients, if I had to do anything like you guys do, I wouldn't last very long, because although I've developed it out a lot more over the last few years, it's not one of my two primary things. So for a lot of people, they are, doing something that isn't working for them. There's some people who are, as you know, who are kind of like trying to do real estate part-time.
Yeah.
And if it really suits who they are, they need to be going for it full time, like really, really going for it. And life will get so much easier because they're living within their type. It's like it works for them. They want to go out and do something. They want to go and get a deal. So, as you know, you meet people all the time, Lisa, who are just so ready to start, like, working with the XP and making the deals and doing what needs to be done and getting the rewards, but they're kind of sitting back. It's like, no, that's not who you are. That it just isn't. Stop doubting that. Who you are is absolutely fine. Like, just to go back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, you're not broken, you're not wrong. And particularly for gladiators and go-getters, real estate is absolutely prime. That's not to say that you can't do it as a guardian. It might be in a very different way. It might be, definitely, homes for families that you're going into if you're more guardian energy. If you're more if you're more of a genie type, it might be that you are partnering with somebody who has those gladiator kind of qualities. So from any position, you can do real estate really successfully. But do know who you are and start to round out the rest of it, because we know this, right? We see this all the time on the internet. We see people who are so overdeveloped in one area that they don't even realize you're not a good person, you're not kind. They've so, like, the guardian part of themselves has just withered on the vine, and they are just not kind, and they're, people are not being attracted to them for that reason, or they're really kind of empty because they haven't gone into their genie. They haven't really got anything interesting to say. If you ask them how they're doing, they just, give you a sales report, and it's like, well, I meant your life. And they look at you like, well, that is my life. And so this is why it's so important that we, recognize the good in each type, but we don't over rely on it.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds great. Okay. So what happens if everybody in your business is the same as you? Like, what if they're all gladiators? What if they're all genies? What's that going to look like? Or everyone around you is that one particular type of personality?
What will happen is normally that you will get results to a certain level, and then it will stick and you won't know why. So let's imagine that you run a small office, and everybody in that office is a gladiator. Everybody is just out there, and it's kind of like, team chants and, aggressive push. What will happen is initially people will start to encourage that gladiator quality in each other. And so you'll start to get more sales. But then if everybody's doing that and then no one is go-getter and no one is doing like the backup paperwork, no one is rallying around again, no one's doing what needs to be done apart from just going and getting that deal, then it's going to start to get messy. It'll be like a messy room. It'll be like, okay, great. Bob, Bob's great. He always gets the pizza at the end of the day, but who clears out the pizza boxes? So you'll
Mm.
have a business that's like that. And also, we know that cliche of the sales office, but then there's a really, really kind receptionist,
Mm.
right? But if you don't have a really kind receptionist, then people aren't going to be welcomed into that office. They're going to feel barked at. They're going to feel like it's too much.
Yeah,
And then if you don't have someone taking care of the vision, what, Lisa, what was that?
like salespeople have got to have the nurturing as well. They've got to have those. If they haven't got that quality, they need to get somebody else that has got that, definitely. Otherwise, it's a trail.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the genie type, again, in business, the genie type is really, really undervalued. But this is where I find when I go into businesses, it really elevates everything because people are like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that. I never would have created that. That's an amazing way to do it. And it could be something like I remember one time in Norway, I went into a company and the solution that we came up with for every single niggle and problem that each worker had was that they had two sales rooms and we made one a kind of a more go-getter sales room and we made the other one more of a guardian genie type sales room. And so one was full of like basketball hoops and standing desks and even there was a Segway and it was that kind of energy. That was more for the gladiators and the go-getters. And then we had another one that was like loads of like cushions and couches. You have no idea how many cushions are just out of shot and how many blankets are folded and all of that, right? That's again, the genie type just loves their comfort. And so, the fact that we then made everybody happy simply by redesigning these two rooms, people were like, never would have thought of that. And to me, it feels obvious because I'm a genie type. And so that's what I do is I think about what doesn't exist yet. And to everybody else, they're so great at taking care of what already exists and moving that forward, that when a genie comes into a business, they can absolutely transform it. So I had this idea once that I wanted to go to NASA. I didn't do it, but I wanted to go to NASA about 20 years ago and offer myself as a poet in residence for NASA. Never quite got there, but I still think it's not a bad idea to just introduce those qualities of imagining and thinking and not just goal setting. Because if people say okay, we got to set more goals, no, maybe you don't. Maybe you need to reimagine the goals you already have with greater texture, greater just sensory oomph to them that they don't yet have. So that is what the genie can always bring to the table. But to answer your question, to round it up, that is the challenge, that if everybody's like you, first of all, we tend to know people that are more like us. And this is why I love talking to you, Lisa, because you always remind me, you always bring me out of myself and you bring me into the areas that I'm like, oh yes, there's this aspect to me too. I too can do this. It's not just that the Lisa B's of the world can do it. Like, Judymay Murphy can do that as well as my things. And so yeah, if you just have everybody the same, you feel very reassured. Ah, yes, this is who we are. This is how success is done. This is how we make it happen. But then after a while, you will start to feel the missing because at your core, your nature is all four types.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. So for those that have been in self-development for a long time, why is it that most people want to stay in their top two personality types and avoid the other two?
It's a comfort zone thing. So we use that phrase all the time. You've got to step outside your comfort zone. But saying to, say, a go-getter, you got to step outside your comfort zone, they'll just go and be more go-getter in a different arena, right? They'll just go and take it somewhere else. Whereas the real discomfort is the one they're not looking at, and that is to sit in a room quietly with themselves
Yeah.
And there was a great philosopher called Blaise Pascal who said most of our problems are about our inability to sit for 15 minutes in a room with ourselves.
Mm.
And I remember smiling at that, and I'm like, well, not for us genies. Like, we can do that like for a week before we even need to go for a snack. We love just sitting there thinking and feeling. And so yeah, this is why we're not actually getting outside of our comfort zone, because we're not even looking. It's not, for many people, it's not a thing to be looked at. If you have someone who's pure gladiator energy and you're encouraging them to be more nurturing, hey, why don't you go and sit with your kids on the floor and play with them? And suddenly, the play session turns into the gladiator saying, no, let's do this. And it becomes like competitive. Okay, let's have a competition to see who can build this. No, it's not about that. It's about, I think that's lovely what you did just there, much more guardian. But they don't see it as a thing. And there's this confusion, because this is what I do with one-to-one coaching as well. This is absolute confusion. Why are we even talking about this?
Mm.
Why are we going there? And it's the same with people who are, pure genie. They're like, oh yeah, no, why are we talking about sales? Shouldn't we be talking about my artistic genius? That's a thing that'll just magically happen when people realize how genius my work is. It's like, no, we need to talk about the thing that you are most uncomfortable with. And that's why we all need coaches, is because they can step by step it, and you'll try and retreat into your way of doing things, and your coach will be able to say, okay, let's go back to that now. Let's look at that thing that you don't want to look at.
But it also not only out of their comfort zone, it's like it's a waste of time, that they'd be thinking, okay, I'm not getting the results, I'm not doing this, it's a waste of time, or the genie would be going, well, that's a waste of time doing that because people are going to discover me anyway, or people are going to know that I've got all this, got all this information or whatever. So it's like it's uncomfortable, but it's also probably they're thinking,
Yeah,
I'm wasting my time. I should be in
because we
my
don't see the value in it. We
yeah.
we don't see that this is a thing that needs to happen. This is important. It doesn't matter is why we feel like it's a waste of time. Why do we feel like it doesn't matter?
Mhm.
Because it's not the main thing that has mattered to us. And so we do get into this repetitive way of being.
Mm.
And that's why we look at extremes of that, and you've got like the burned out exec who has been pure gladiator,
Mm.
and
There's
then he
plenty of
goes
those.
up a mountain in Nepal, and he suddenly is looking at flowers and
Mm.
saying nice things to people, and admiring a sunset or a water buffalo or something, and that's but let's not wait until it becomes that we have to,
Mm.
so
But that's
what will
the,
happen to
I
Mhm.
was just going to say there's a lot of, highly, highly successful people, and you think they've got everything, that why aren't they happy? And a lot of that time is because they're stuck in one mode, aren't they? They're not, as you said, they're not smelling the roses. They're not appreciating some of the things that they have got. They're just in go, go, go mode, or they're in gladiator mode, and they don't ever connect with themselves or anybody else.
Yeah, so they don't go into guardian mode and they don't go into genie mode.
Mm.
And as you say, it's because they're undervaluing that, and they're thinking, why would I? And then also we see, you might have someone, just in case people think it's either that you are gladiator go getter as your second, or that you are guardian genie. You can actually have different mixes. So there are some people who will, a really good example is most stand-up comedians are gladiator first and guardian second. And so they can just get in there. It's quite an aggressive hunter type thing to tell a joke, to demand that people look at you and demand that they get it. It's very much it's a leadership role to be on a stage doing stand-up comedy. But then they can't have everybody feeling cold toward them. They've got to be charming too. So even if they are roasting someone in the first row for arriving in late or for something funny that they're wearing, at the same time there's just feeling of I've got you, I'm looking after you, as a guardian quality to it as well. And then you have people who I think really interesting is a lot of really busy moms are in a mixture of a guardian role and also go-getter. And so they're just kind of like Oh yes, sweetie, that picture looks really lovely. Right now we have to get you to badminton practice. Do you know?
Mm,
So you can be a mixture of any type, and just recognizing what that mixture is. What do you lead with? What do you then go to when that one isn't working, or when you get exhausted with that one? And then, looking at first, which one do I just really not go to? And if that feels too uncomfortable at first, go to the other one. Because if you take your third one, you're like, yeah, I can kind of go there. And then you build that out. That will then give you the confidence to look at the one that you haven't been looking at.
perfect. Okay. So do you think people can change completely? Do you think people can be a gladiator and then go completely to a genie, or any of the other personalities?
No,
Yeah.
I think that there's such a mixture of reasons why you become who you are, why you lead in that way. A lot of it is to do with your physical makeup, with your biology, and that could just be a genetic thing. It could be a thing that you've conditioned. It tends to be that it starts off that genetically you're a little bit leaning toward that. So maybe, people who are gladiators tend to have more brain testosterone, not testosterone as a sex hormone, but like in their brain, they tend to just have that kind of forcefulness kind of moving them forward. And then they develop that, and then it becomes more them.
Mm.
As people age, they tend to, get better at moving. If they're aware, when they're aware, they get better at moving into the other types. So if you have someone who has, just had all these great dreams and visions for a very, very long time, and they're really, really good at taking care of people. The fantastic thing is, once they decide that they're going to move toward go-getter more, or they're going to move into gladiator more, then their results just skyrocket so quickly, because everyone is already magnetically drawn toward them. Because they're so fascinating, because they're so interesting, because they are, that people feel really cared for around them. And now finally, they're getting themselves out there. Now finally, they're being insistent, and they are, making sure that they get what they want out from the world. The results are just so huge. So yes, people can change. However, it's not going to be natural the way it was when you first became who you became. That happened, that evolved, that was to do with who you were, that was to do with your environment. But now it's to do with choice and follow through. You're
Mm.
choosing to do something different, to be someone different, to go higher. And
Mm.
then you follow through. You do what you need to do. You make the phone calls that you need to make. You send the emails that you need to send. You say yes to what you need to say yes to.
Mm.
And then you obviously condition that by getting around people who are on a similar journey of, it's more than self-actualization. I call it hyper-actualization, because self-actualization, like in the old way with the Maslow, brilliant system, but it is more about just you becoming the best version of who you already are. But for
Mm.
me, this hyper-actualization is, you becoming the best version of who you aren't even yet, that you
Mm.
can be different. So if you find yourself making I am statements like, oh, I'm so lazy. No, you're not lazy. You just need to develop your go-getter.
Mm.
Oh gosh, I'm such a bossy boots. Well, you can call it bossy boots if that feels good to you, but actually you might be missing your amazing gladiator qualities. So,
Mm.
saying something like, oh, I'm just really good at contribution. Well, hang on, I'm a guardian. That's more sacred than just being servile, right? So, acknowledge what's really, really good, and then say to yourself, not only am I going to step a little bit more into this, but I'm going to do it with the intention that I'm going to be a hyper actualized person in my life, not just developed out extremely. It's like if you go to the gym, you're not just going to go and work your right arm and just have this massive, great right arm.
Mhm.
You work out everything. You make sure that you're taking care of your flexibility. You make sure you're taking care
Mm.
of being able to move in different ways, the articulation of your joints, as well as your muscles, as well as your nutrition. So we're taking care of all of those things in our body. We're not just saying it's okay because I drink green juice and I work out my right arm. You can see how ludicrous that is as an idea. Same thing for, who you are as a person. You're not just that. You're
Yeah.
so much.
You could be born a certain way, your circumstances change you to a different way and you adapt to a different style. But then, as you said, taking a holistic look at, if you're a genie style, then you will need to incorporate business strategies. Otherwise, you're not going to make the money that you want to make.
And a really important thing that you just said there, Lisa, was, that circumstances change. Don't wait until circumstances force you to change. Take the lead. Decide that you're going to become more of whatever you need to be before. So a lot of people will become more guardian after everybody leaves them, so don't wait for that. Appreciate the people that you have in your life right now. A lot of people will become more go-getter when suddenly it looks like they're not going to be able to survive. Don't wait for that. Just take it in hand right now.
Exactly. Good point. Okay. So I know there's 8 different personality types to your 8G system. So we haven't got enough time, obviously, to go through all of those today. So can you briefly tell us what those other 4 types are?
Well, I could, but I think that for this, it would just actually confuse people more. Work on that first. Come to me. Either, I do personal coaching as well as doing events for different groups. But it is something that when you there's so much that needs to be explained around it because it does go really deep. Of course, being a genie type, I've worked out what are the depths to that. But in short, it's all about what happens when it's almost like what happens when the type starts to eat itself. So we were talking about, that you can bring it out a certain way, and then what used to be or could be a strength starts to become a weakness. Have you ever, as a kid, you ate the same food, or when you were a student, and suddenly you're like, oh, I love this food, and you ate it for so many days straight? It's kind of like a version of that, and you just can't look at it, and it starts to not nourish you anymore because it's the same kind of vitamins that are getting into you. And so it's like, what happens when the gladiator becomes too gladiator without it being bolstered by the other 3 types? What happens when the go-getter becomes too go-getter? So it's like, how do you devolve into this kind of cliche of yourself that is in fact quite damaging? And we can see that out there in the world. We can see it in sitcoms. You see people that are just so that it starts to work against them. So the other 4 types are kind of the warning signals, don't be this kind of a way of doing things.
Thank you. That was perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. And I will include all of your details underneath the video. I'll put your details for coaching and everything. And thank you so much for joining me. And we're going to be doing another podcast soon as well. So thank you very much for your time.
An absolute pleasure.
You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk About Real Estate podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have a question about real estate, then please join the group on Facebook, also called Let's Talk About Real Estate. For those of you who are interested in EXP, please join us at 10 a.m. Brisbane time every Wednesday morning for EXP Explained. Thank you again for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and see you next week.